Our next speaker this evening is Avigail Abarbanel. She is a BACP Senior Accredited Psychotherapist with 25 years' experience in private practice. Avigail was born, raised and educated in Israel. She is a granddaughter of a Holocaust survivors on her mother's side, and she served in the Israeli army between 1982 and 1984. In 2001, 10 years after moving to Australia, Abigail renounced her Israeli citizenship in protest against Israel's treatment of the Palestinian people. Since then, Abigail has spoken widely and openly about Israel's settler colonial project in Palestine. Abigail will speak about her experience of indoctrination in Israel, about Israel's culture, the accusations of antisemitism directed at anyone who criticises Israel, and about why people find it so hard to stand up for Palestinian people. Thank you, Abigail.
After hearing all the speakers before me, especially Celine, and especially everybody who's actually been there, I hope that I can add something useful to this evening. I won't repeat the introduction because it's already been made. I just wanted to say I'm usually a very good sleeper, but I've not slept properly since last October. My worst nightmare has been unfolding in front of my eyes. As I watch Gaza, I do need the light, so that's okay. I'm sorry, I just can't read it down. As I watch Gaza, I find myself going through the worst grief that I have ever experienced. When I renounced my Israeli citizenship in 2001 and began to speak out on Palestine, I was already a practicing psychotherapist. I wondered at the time what contribution I could make as an activist. It became obvious to me that my particular skill set and my background best equipped me to support activists for Palestinian human rights. Activism is always difficult, and all activists need support. But I've learned that people who want to stand up for the Palestinian people, for Palestinian human rights, might need extra support. Many people have no problem at all supporting any victim group anywhere in the world, but they find it difficult to stand up for the Palestinian people. The question is why? Why is it so difficult for people to stand up for the Palestinian people? In what way is the Palestinian cause different or more complicated, quote-unquote, than any other human rights cause on the planet? In what way are the Palestinian people different from any other victim group? The answer is that the situation in Palestine is no different, nor is it more complicated than any other example of settler colonialism in human history. Israel is no different than any perpetrator of settler colonialism throughout human history. The Palestinian people are no different than any victim group of settler colonialism and genocide in human history. And yet, something holds people back, many people back, from supporting the Palestinian people. Our own government is currently withholding support for Israel's victims in Gaza while continuing to arm Israel. 2 days ago, our Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, traveled to Israel to shake hands with Netanyahu, whom the International Criminal Court is seeking to have arrested for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Most people do not understand Israel, or rather, they misunderstand what Israel is. They imagine there are two sides, quote-unquote, two sides to the story, and they think that choosing one side over another is wrong. They worry that supporting the Palestinians makes them anti-Semitic, and given the history of Jewish persecution, they're worried about offending Jews. My aim is to help people feel more confident in standing up for the human rights of the Palestinian people. Israel is in the process of exterminating the population of Gaza by any means possible, including deliberate starvation. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is not an act of war, is not an accident, it is deliberate. At the same time, Israel is escalating its takeover of what remains of the occupied West Bank, and the last Palestinian group Israel is coming for are the Palestinian citizens of Israel, who have always been second-class citizens. The Palestinians everywhere in historic Palestine are running out of time. There are two important facts that people need to understand about Israel. One, Israel is a settler colonial state. And 2, Israeli society operates like a cult. The events that are unfolding in Gaza did not begin in October last year. They did not start with the Holocaust, not even with the ethnic cleansing of 1948. In 1948, the unilaterally declared State of Israel deliberately and systematically expelled 750,000 Palestinians, almost the entire Palestinian population, at gunpoint and on the back of massacres and incidents of gang rapes. This is all well documented. At the same time, Israel deliberately flattened 500 villages and towns to make sure the former residents had nowhere to return to. Only 150,000 Palestinians remained behind, but most were internally displaced by the Israeli forces and were not allowed to return to their homes. The people of Gaza are the descendants of the original refugees from the 1948 Nakba, ethnically cleansed from their country and their homes. The origins of what you see in Gaza go back to the late 19th century in Europe, to the establishment of the Zionist movement. Zionism was created with significant Christian and British government encouragement and backing. Zionism is a settler colonialist project whose aim is to create an exclusively Jewish state run by Jews and for Jews only. I'm always asked what Zionism is. Well, that's what Zionism is. The Zionists thought this would save Jews from persecution. Wishing for an exclusive ethnic state is not inherently wrong, except that the Zionists chose Palestine as the site for the future Jewish state. When the Zionists first appeared in Palestine in 1882, it was fully populated and had a thriving society. Palestine had a distinct ethnic population with its own unique culture, Arabic dialect, cuisine, customs, industry, art, literature, and history. The Zionist movement never intended to share the land with the Palestinian inhabitants, who originally welcomed the Jews. There is plenty of documented evidence to prove this. Next slide. If you want to read about this, I can recommend Professor Ilan Pape's book, 10 Myths About Israel. Any book by Pape is worth your time. What stands out when you read about Zionism, which is the same with all settler colonial and colonial movement, is the absence of any compassion or empathy for the people, for the Palestinian people. Speaking about the fate of an entire people, as if there were boxes you move from one shelf to another, is nothing short of psychopathy. Settler colonialism is a crime against humanity, no matter who commits it, when or who the victims happen to be. The second fact that people don't know or do not understand about Israel is that Israeli society operates like a dangerous cult. Much like any cult, Israeli psychology is paranoid, insular, inward-looking, and all-pervasive. The things you learn when you grow up there mold your identity, your way of thinking and feeling, and the way you perceive the world and your place in it. You might rightly say that everyone's upbringing and education shaped them this way, but one of the most important things that differentiates a cult mindset from ordinary society has to do with identity. Cults aim to replace individual identity with group identity, and Israel is no different. Jewish-Israeli indoctrination does not just shape you, it becomes you. You are an Israeli first and a human being second. One of the most disturbing lessons Israel teaches its children from the start of life is that the world hates them and always will hate them simply because they're Jewish. I was taught, and Israel still teaches it, that all non-Jews are anti-Semitic, even if they don't know it yet. The Israeli state indoctrinates people that the only thing that stands between Jews and annihilation is Israel. Therefore, the purpose of every Jew's life, inside or outside of Israel, is to protect Israel by any means possible. Already in primary school, we were taught that the end always justifies the means. The end is the survival of the exclusively Jewish state. The means are anything deemed necessary to protect it, no matter what. What you see in Gaza is the result of that. I started to become aware of my own cult-like psychology when, as a psychotherapist back in Australia, I began to work with cult escapees. I was shocked when I realized how similar my own psychology was to theirs. I had the same psychological structure in relation to Israel that my clients had in relation to their cults that they were born into and chose to leave. Individuality and independent thinking are problematic in cults. In Israel, you can have your own thoughts as long as they do not cross the line of what is possible to question. If you do have doubts, you keep them to yourself. You certainly do not share them with the outside world like I'm doing, which is the ultimate sin. Cults do not like their secrets known to the outside, to the world outside them. Zionism and its creation, Israel, have hijacked the definition of Jewishness. For Israel, being Jewish is not defined by religious affiliation. It doesn't matter if you follow Jewish religion to be Jewish. Being Jewish means having Jewish blood, quote unquote. In other words, Jewishness in Israel is defined as a race. Imagine that your country asked you what race you were on your passport application, on your application for a mortgage or a job, or on your marriage application. Imagine that your children's school checked their race before they could be admitted. Imagine that your race, quote unquote, conditioned where you were allowed to live. This is Israel. In our society, racial discrimination is against the law, but in Israel, your birth certificate and ID card tell everyone what your race is. Yeah. Oh, you got it. Okay. It is hidden behind the euphemism nationality because Israeli documentation can be seen by people outside of Israel, so they're too embarrassed about it. They don't want to say race, so they call it nationality. But everybody in Israel knows what nationality really means. It does not mean citizenship, it means race, blood. The point is, Israel is a country meant only for one racial group. It is enshrined in Israeli law that the state of Israel belongs only to Jews. Israel can only be considered a democracy in the same way that apartheid South Africa was a democracy only for white people. Israel does not share values with the rest of the Western world. It only pretended to for the past few decades in order to gain Western economic and political support. I'm nearly done. Why is it important to understand all of this? Because when people do not understand what Israel is, what its aims are, and what it is capable of, they tend to reach the wrong conclusions. They continue to talk about negotiations or peace or two-state solution. If you know Israel from within, you would know the idea of the two-state solution was always fictional. It was perpetuated by Israel to gain international support, and it worked. When people do not know Israel, they support a perpetrator instead of its victim. Where there is an imbalance of power and abuse, it is immoral to remain neutral or silent or to turn a blind eye. To do so demonstrates a lack of empathy. All through human history, perpetrators have been getting away with crimes because of bystanders. As a species, we have a shameful history of not only abandoning victims, but of further demonizing and dehumanizing them. This is what Salim had to live with, actually. The research literature on trauma is very clear about that. To remain silent on Israel, or worse, to support it, means supporting a society that perceives reality in bizarre terms. Israeli society is profoundly racist, and it is dominated by ideas of specialness and entitlement. It is a society where empathy for the Palestinians is punishable. Anyone who is not completely in love with Israel is labeled anti-Semitic. Not only does this trivialize the real meaning of anti-Semitism, it also intentionally distracts people away from what is really important, which is the crime against humanity that Israel has been committing. Israel has always worked hard to weaken support to the victims of its settler colonial project, to the Palestinian people. The less support victims have, the easier it is for perpetrators to overpower them and achieve their goals. This happens at all levels of society, from child abuse to domestic abuse to workplace bullying. It is a common pattern. Israel will not change from within, and the Palestinians are running out of time. The only way Israel can be forced to stop its genocidal settler colonial project is through decisive sanctions and boycotts. We must pressure our governments to punish Israel instead of rewarding it. You do not have to be an expert on the history of Israel and Palestine to do the right thing. You just need to open your eyes and look at the crime being committed. And my fellow speakers are all showing that. Our fellow human beings are being exterminated simply for living on the land that another people want all for themselves. They need our help. It is normal to doubt, and it is normal to feel fear. If you hesitate, ask yourself why you're hesitating, and then remind yourself to focus on the crime. It does not matter who the perpetrator is, what excuses they offer for what they do, or who the victim is. A crime is a crime. Thank you.